The air was full of smoke and fire. The battlefield was quiet now. But not safe. Everything was broken walls. Trees, bodies, and dreams. Somewhere in that mess, she was bleeding. Alone, afraid, and forgotten. Her name was Sira, and she was not human. Purple blood ran down her side. Her breathing was slow, shaky. Her armor was torn. Her eyes glassy. She tried to move, but pain stopped her. She could feel the cold ground beneath her body, and the hot sting of dust in her wounds. She had been left behind by her own squad. The fight had been too fast, too much chaos, too many explosions. They thought she was already dead. She thought so too, for a while not far from her. A human squad was moving. One of them was a field medic named Ethan. He carried a rifle, but also a heavy bag of medical gear. He was trained to save lives, but only his own kind. Orders were clear: leave the enemy alone. But Ethan had never been good at ignoring pain. He heard something, a sound too soft for the others to notice. A weak, broken voice carried by the wind. He turned, frowning beneath his helmet. There, near a crushed transport, he saw her, an alien girl, lying in a pool of purple. Ethan's boots crunched over the debris. He moved slowly, rifle ready, unsure. She didn't look like a threat. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. He knelt beside her, hands shaking slightly. She looked at him with wide eyes. Filled with fear, her lips moved. A whisper, "Help. Please." He blinked, surprised she spoke his language. His team was calling him over the radio, "Fall back." Now, but Ethan didn't answer. He was looking at her wound. Deep and raw, he dropped his rifle, tore open his medkit, and started working. She gasped in pain as he pressed a seal against the bleeding. "Stay still," he said softly. "Why?" She whispered. "I'm supposed to let you die," he said. "But I won't," she coughed, blood on her lips. Her eyes were wet now. Nobody had ever helped her without a reason, not even her own people. Ethan wrapped her side, injected a stabilizer. She winced, but stayed quiet. The radio buzzed again. "Ethan, report, where are you?" He turned it off. The war could wait, her life could not. She grabbed his wrist weakly. Her fingers cold, skin soft and strange. "You're human?" she said. "And you're alive?" he replied, trying to smile. The ground shook a Farouf. Explosion. Ethan looked up, eyes scanning the horizon. More soldiers would be coming soon. He had no plan, no backup. Just a dying alien girl and a choice. He picked her up, carefully. She cried out in pain, but held on to his jacket. Her blood smeared across his armor. He moved fast, dodging shadows, staying low. He found a half-collapsed building safer now, inside. He laid her down and started a fire with a spark tool. She watched him with half-closed eyes. "Why are you doing this?" She asked. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe I'm just tired of watching people die." He gave her water. Warm from his canteen, she drank slowly, like it was the first kindness she had ever known. Her body trembled, but she was still breathing. That was enough for now. Ethan leaned back against the wall, staring at her, then at the dark sky above. There were so many stars out there, so many battles, so much hate. But here, in this moment, under fire and ruin, a human had dropped his rifle to save an enemy. And an alien girl had opened her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." He looked at her and nodded. "You're safe now," he said, but deep inside, he knew the real danger hadn't even started yet. The sky was turning dark. Black smoke still rose in the distance. The smell of burning metal and blood filled the air. Ethan sat in silence, watching the alien girl breathe. Her chest rose and fell, but it was weak. She was alive, but just barely. Her name echoed in his mind, Sira. She had whispered it before passing out. Now she lay curled near the small fire he built. Her face pale, body shivering even with the heat. Ethan checked her wound again. The seal he placed earlier was leaking. He reached into his med kit, but most of his supplies were gone. He had used the last stabilizer, only gauze, a bit of tape. And a pain suppressor remained. "Hang in there," he whispered. "You're not dying today." He cleaned her wound again. Slowly, her skin twitched at his touch. She was still fighting even half dead. Ethan respected that. His radio buzzed. A voice crackled. "Eco 7, respond. Where the hell are you?" He didn't answer. Another message came. "Angrier Medic. Ethan. Report immediately, fallback complete." He switched the radio off. If they found out he was with an enemy, they'd call him a traitor. Ethan looked down at Sierra. Her lips were dry, her hands twitching. He lifted her head gently, poured a few drops of water into her mouth. She coughed, blinked, then focused on his face. "You? Still here?" She whispered. "Yeah." He nodded. "Told you I wouldn't leave." Her eyes were strange dark silver with a soft glow. She looked scared, but also confused. "You should have left me," she said slowly. Ethan shook his head. "I'm a medic. I don't leave people to die." She turned her face. Wincing in pain, "No one ever saved me before," she muttered. "My own people ran when I fell." Ethan didn't know what to say, so he just sat beside her, watching the fire crackle. After a while, she pulled something from around her neck. A small metal pendant, cracked and dull. She placed it in his hand. "Take it," she said. "It's worthless, but it's all I have." He looked at it closely. It was shaped like a star, with symbols on the back. "What does it mean?" he asked. "It's from my sister," she whispered. Before she died, silence settled between them. The kind of silence that feels heavy, full of memories. Ethan gently closed her hand over the pendant. "You keep it," he said. "You'll need it when we get out of here." Sierra gave a soft smile. Barely visible outside, the wind picked up again. Ethan checked the edges of the shelter. Loose bricks. Crumbling walls. It wouldn't last forever, but for now. It was the only thing between them and death. Sierra's breathing grew slower. Her eyes fluttered closed. Ethan panicked, quickly checking her pulse. It was faint to faint. Come on," he said, tapping her cheek. "Sierra, stay with me." He remembered a trick from training. He took out the pain suppressor, injected a small dose into her neck. She jerked, eyes shooting open with a soft gasp. "There you are," he said, sighing with relief. She blinked slowly, then whispered, "That hurt, means it worked," he replied with a grin. But he knew this was only a delay. She was losing too much blood. And he had no more medjol, no proper equipment. He needed help, but calling for it would mean explaining her. An enemy, a wounded alien girl, would they even care? Would they shoot her on sight? He didn't know. He only knew one thing: he wasn't letting her die. He reached into his bag and pulled out his emergency beacon. It was meant for calling an evac, but it would also alert every drone. Enemy or friendly within kilometers. He hesitated, finger hovering over the button, then looked at her again. She was unconscious once more. Her hand still gripped the corner of his jacket. Ethan pressed the button. The beacon blinked red, sending out a pulse every 5 seconds. He sat back, holding his rifle again. But this time, not to shoot, just to wait. He would protect her, even if it cost him everything. Even if no one understood why. Even if the whole world called him a traitor, because sometimes saving a life was worth more than following orders. And sometimes the enemy bleeding in your arms was just a girl who didn't want to die alone. The smoke was thicker now. It wrapped around the broken buildings like a ghost. The sky above had turned orange, lit by distant fire and falling ash. Ethan pulled a torn blanket over Sarah, then peeked through the cracks in the ruined wall. He heard no voices, but silence wasn't safety anymore. Every step he took outside was a risk. But staying too long would kill her. He needed fresh bandages, water, and something stronger to stop the bleeding. The beacon was still blinking red, but no rescue ship had come. No reply, no signal, only the low hum of a distant drone. Ethan took one last look at her. Her skin was even paler than before. Purple blood stained her side and soaked the ground beneath her. He pressed her hand gently. "I'll be back," he whispered. "Don't give up." She didn't respond. She was lost in sleep, maybe drifting closer to death. He slipped out of the shelter and into the smoky ruins, step by step, moving low and quiet. The battlefield was full of shadows and broken machines. His boots crunched over glass and metal. He passed a burnt-out hover tank. Its treads melted. He kept going until he spotted a destroyed outpost ahead. Maybe it had supplies. Maybe someone had left behind a medkit. As he climbed through a shattered window, he heard a buzzing sound. He ducked quickly, heart racing. A recon drone flew past overhead, scanning for movement. If it saw him, it would call in an airstrike or worse. A kill squad. He waited in silence until it passed. Inside the outpost, everything was broken. Desks flipped, lockers torn open. Dried blood on the floor, but luck was still on his side. In the far corner, under a fallen beam, he spotted a red box emergency medical gear. He crawled toward it and pried it open. Inside, bandages, injectors, blood foam, and a bottle of purified water. He almost laughed with relief, grabbing everything. He stuffed it into his satchel and turned to leave. That's when he heard footsteps, fast, heavy boots on broken tile. Not one per multiple voices, two, sharp and cold. Alien soldiers searching. He slid under a metal desk and held his breath. The soldiers entered, rifles ready, scanning the room. One of them said something in their own language. Another replied loud and angry, then silence. Ethan's hand tightened around his knife. If they found him, he couldn't run, he could fight. But it would be suicide. His heart pounded in his ears. One of the boots stopped right next to the desk. He could see the soldier's shadow through the cracks. The alien bent down to inspect something on the floor. Then, just as suddenly, they moved on. Minutes passed like hours when he finally crawled out. The outpost was empty again. He didn't wait. He ran, low and fast. Back through the smoke and rubble, his lungs burned. And the weight of the medkit felt heavier with every step. He reached the ruined shelter. Gasping for air, pushed inside and froze. Ciro wasn't breathing. Her chest was still. Her mouth slightly open. No, no, no. Ethan dropped the supplies and rushed to her. He tore the blanket off, checked her pulse, nothing. His hands shook. He grabbed the injector, filled it with blood foam and pain suppressor mix, then pressed it to her neck. "Come on, don't do this," he whispered. 1 second, 2 seconds, then she gasped. A broken breath, her eyes fluttered open, just barely. She looked at him like a child waking from a nightmare. "You came back," she whispered. "I said I would," he replied, smiling through tears. He cleaned her wound with trembling fingers, wrapped it in fresh bandages, applied the new seal. She winced, but didn't cry this time. Her strength was still fading, but now she had a chance. He gave her sips of clean water. She drank slowly, blinking up at the firelight. Outside, the world was still burning. But inside the shelter, there was peace. "You risked everything," she said softly. "I couldn't leave you," he replied. "Not after you looked at me like that." "Like what?" "Like someone who still wanted to live." A long pause filled the space between them. Then Ciro whispered, "I didn't expect." Kindness. Ethan didn't answer. He just sat beside her, holding her hand, and outside. The smoke began to rise again because rescue was not coming yet. But the fight to survive had just begun. The sky was darker now. The firelight inside the broken shelter flickered. Ethan sat beside Sierra, eyes heavy but alert. Every noise outside made his grip tighten on the rifle. They weren't safe here, not from enemies. Not from drones, not even from their own people. Sierra slept quietly, but her breathing was still slow. The new bandages had stopped the bleeding. Yet her body was weak, fragile like glass. He could feel how close she still was to death. He leaned against the wall, thinking he had done the right thing, hadn't he? He was trained to save lives, not judge who deserved to live. Still, the weight of his decision sat on his chest like a stone. His squad must think he was dead, or worse, missing with an enemy. If they found out what he had done, they'd call him a traitor, but how could he walk away? How could he see her bleeding in the dust and just leave? Sierra stirred, groaned softly. Ethan moved closer. "You're safe," he whispered. "Still here." She blinked, her silver eyes barely open. "Where are we?" she asked. "Behind enemy lines," Ethan replied. "Yours and mine both." She laughed, though it hurt. "That makes us both fugitives." He smiled back, tired. "Guess we're teammates now, for a moment." They just looked at each other. Two people who were never meant to meet. Two enemies caught in the same storm. Then the sound of engines cut through the silence. Ethan stood up fast, rifle in hand. A transport ship, low heavy, moving slowly across the sky. But it wasn't human, and it wasn't rescue. "It's one of mine," Sierra said, voice weak. "Will they help you?" Ethan asked. She looked away. "No." He stared at her, confused. "Why not?" "I'm defective," she said. "I failed in training." Slowed the unit down, her voice shook now. "I only got sent to the front because no one cared if I lived or died. They'll leave me again," she whispered. "Or kill me for being captured." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had known cruelty in war, but this was worse. He lowered the rifle, heart heavy. "They won't touch you," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." Sierra looked at him with something like shock, then slowly nodded. She believed him now. The transport flew over and past, never stopping. Ethan sighed in relief. But the danger wasn't over soon. Both sides would comb the ruins. They had to move. "I can't walk," she said quietly. "I know," he replied. "I'll carry you." He took some wires from a broken drone, tied them to a metal panel, turned it into a sled of sorts. He gently lifted her onto it, using a cloth to cushion her back. Then tied the handles to his belt. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Not even close," she said with a smile. He grinned. Too bad. He pulled the sled slowly across the rubble. Every step burned his legs. Every sound made him freeze and listen. Gunfire echoed in the distant short bursts. Angry, someone was still fighting out there. As he crossed what used to be a street, he spotted movement, two soldiers in black armor. Not human. He ducked behind a wall, heart racing. They were scanning for heat signatures. Sierra shivered behind him, clutching the pendant around her neck. "They'll find us," she whispered. "No," Ethan said. "They won't." He pulled a torn thermal blanket over her and then lay still himself, covered in dust, silent as the dead. The soldiers passed by. One stopped, looked around. Ethan held his breath, finger on the rifle trigger. Then finally they moved on, fading into the smoke. He waited 10 minutes before moving again. His back ached, hands blistered, legs shaky. But he didn't stop. He couldn't, as dawn began to break over the ruins. Ethan spotted a half-standing Cums tower in the distance. "If I get there, I might boost the beacon," he said to himself. He looked back at Sierra, who had fallen asleep again. Her chest still rising, slower but steady. They were alone, far from help, hunted by both sides. But something had changed between them now. He wasn't dragging an enemy anymore. He was protecting someone who mattered. Sierra was more than a soldier, more than a body in the dust. She was someone who had been thrown away on. He had chosen to pick her up. And now, in the heart of enemy territory, that choice was going to test every part of him. The sun rose slowly over the battlefield. Its weak light filtered through the smoke like faded gold. Everything looked broken, silent. Empty like the war had chewed the land and spit out the bones. Ethan stood at the edge of a hill, pulling a homemade sled behind him. On it lay Sierra, her eyes closed, breath light. She hadn't spoken since midnight. Her fever was rising again. He could feel the heat from her skin, even through the cloth. She needed real help, real medicine, but every step forward was into more danger. Behind them, the area was being swept by both sides. And ahead, no one knew if rescue would ever come. Ethan stopped near the wreck of an old Cums tower. It tilted like a dead tree, but some of the wires still glowed faintly. He dropped to his knees and began working. He pulled out his signal beacon and connected the wires. Sparks flew, burning his hands, but the red light began to blink faster. Signal strength rising, he sat back and looked at the sky. "Come on," he whispered. "Just hear us." A soft moan behind him made him turn. Sierra was stirring again. Her voice was thin and cracked. "You still here?" Ethan smiled, moving back to her side. "Always," he said. Giving her some water, she drank it slowly. Then leaned her head to the side. "You should have left me," she said, for the second time. And for the second time, Ethan ignored that. "Rescue will come," he said. "The beacon's working now." She looked at the tower, blinking tiredly, and if it doesn't? He took her hand gently. "Then I'll carry you until it does." Sierra's lips trembled. She had seen war. She had seen betrayal, but she had never seen someone like him. A human who looked at her like she wasn't trash, like she was worth saving. "Why?" she asked softly. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked down at the ground, then up at the sky. "Because I made a promise once," he said slowly. "My sister died on a battlefield like this." Sierra listened. Her eyes fixed on his. She was injured, alone. "And I wasn't there," he continued. "They found her 2 days later. Body half buried in ash." He paused, the memory choking his throat. She begged for help. No one came. He looked at Sarah. "I swore I'd never let that happen again. You're not her," he added. "But I saw the same fear in your eyes, and I refused to walk away." Sierra's eyes filled with tears. She gripped his hand tightly. That pain, that loss, she felt it too. For the first time, she didn't feel like a soldier or an enemy. She felt human. A sound in the distance broke the moment. Engines, low, deep. Getting closer, Ethan stood, heart racing. He raised his rifle and aimed toward the sound. A small drone hovered above the ridge. Blinking blue, he didn't shoot. It wasn't attacking, Nate was scanning. Seconds later, a voice crackled from his comm. "Unidentified beacon received. Identify yourself." Ethan grabbed the device. "Field medic Ethan M12, he said. "One wounded, requesting evac." There was a pause. "Enemy wounded?" The voice asked coldly. "Yes," Ethan said, without hesitation. "But she's not a threat. She's dying." Another pause. "Longer this time. Stand by," the voice said. Then silence. Ethan looked down at Sierra. She was watching him, lips pressed tight. "If they don't take me?" she asked. "They will," Ethan said. "And if they try to separate us?" He knelt beside her. "Then, I fight for you." The wind picked up, blowing ash across the open field. The drone beeped and flew away, disappearing into the horizon. Minutes passed, then more. Then, the sound of a dropship roared above the sky. Ethan stood, waving both arms. The ship hovered, scanning the area, then slowly it descended. Kicking up dust, a hatch opened, and soldiers stepped out. Weapons ready? They pointed at Sierra. What is she? The lead soldier asked. She's alive, Ethan said. Standing in front of her, she's with me. The officer narrowed his eyes. HQ isn't going to like this. I don't care, Ethan replied. I gave her a promise. A long moment passed. Then the officer waved a medic forward. Get them both on board, he said. But keep an eye on the alien. Ethan lifted Sarah gently into his arms. She looked up at him, whispering, You kept your promise. He smiled down at her. I always do, and with that, the human carried the enemy into the ship. Not as a prisoner, but as someone worth saving. And the battlefield, for once, felt a little less cruel. Asterisk, the dropship rose into the sky. Its engines roared like thunder behind them. Inside, Ethan sat on the cold steel floor. Holding Sierra's hand, her head rested against his chest. Body wrapped in clean bandages, she was still weak, but she was alive. Human soldiers sat across from them, silent and tense. Their eyes stayed locked on the alien girl in Ethan's arms, their fingers near their triggers. Just in case, Ethan felt their stares, but he didn't care. He had made his choice. He had saved her, and no one could change that now. The medic from the ship had given her oxygen, fluids, and a sedative. She was sleeping peacefully now. Ethan leaned back, exhausted. He hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. But he refused to close his eyes, not until she was safe. HQ might court-martial you, the lead soldier said finally. You helped the enemy. Ethan met his eyes, calm but firm. She stopped being the enemy the moment she started dying. The soldier didn't reply. The dropship began to shake. A voice came over the intercom. Approaching turbulence, unknown signal detected. Possible pursuit. Ethan tensed. What kind of signal? Not ours, the pilot said. Something big and fast, looks hostile. The soldiers moved quickly, grabbing their rifles and securing gear. Ethan stayed beside Sierra. If this was an ambush, he'd protect her with his last breath. The ship jolted again, this time harder. Something had hit the hull. Enemy drone rear thruster hit, the pilot shouted. We're losing altitude, prepare for emergency landing. The sky spun. The walls rattled. Sierra woke up, dazed and scared. What's happening? She asked. Ethan pulled her closer. Hold on to me. The dropship crashed down into a field of ash and black rock. Metal screamed, flames burst, everything went dark for a second. Then silence, smoke filled the cabin. Lights flickered, some soldiers groaned, injured. Ethan checked Sierra. Quickly she had a gash on her forehead. But she was breathing. The side hatch burst open. And one of the soldiers stumbled out. We have to move, someone shouted. It's still out there. Ethan helped Sierra to her feet. She leaned against him, barely able to walk. They stepped out into a gray wasteland, sky full of clouds, air thick with smoke in the distance. They heard it, a mechanical shriek, loud and angry. Recon drone, the officer said, loading a grenade launcher. Big one on TVAC class. Ethan looked around. The other soldiers were injured or dazed. Only he and 2 others could still fight, and the drone was already coming. Fast and low, he helped Sierra sit behind a rock. You stay here, he said. Don't move. I can help, she said weakly. You already helped, he whispered. You gave me something to fight for. Then he stood and joined the soldiers. The drone appeared large, sleek, and deadly. It fired a warning shot that blasted a crater near them. The soldiers returned fire, but their weapons were too weak. One soldier went down screaming, hit in the leg. The officer shouted, Fall back, we can't stop it. Ethan looked at his rifle. He had 1 shot left, 1 bullet, 1 chance. He waited, heart pounding. Then ran forward straight toward the drone. The machine locked onto him instantly. It fired. He dodged. Barely. He kept running. Dodging, jumping over debris. He reached a wrecked jeep, climbed it fast. Now he was level with the drone's eye. He aimed, hands shaking, breath short. He whispered. "This is for her," he fired. The bullet struck a weak point near the drone's scanner. It sparked, then exploded. Flames shot out as the drone crashed to the ground. Burning smoke filled the air again. Ethan collapsed beside the wreckage, gasping. His body was shaking. Blood running from a cut on his arm. He heard footsteps. Sierra had crawled to him. Her hands shaking. "You idiot," she whispered. "You could have died. I told you I'd protect you," he said. Smiling through the pain, the officer ran up. Staring at the destroyed drone, "You took it down." Ethan nodded. One shot, the officer looked between Ethan and Sierra. Then gave a long sigh. "Extraction team is on the way," he said. "They'll be here in 15 minutes, if we're lucky." Ethan looked at Sarah. Her face was tired but proud. He had kept his promise. Even with one bullet left, even in enemy territory. He had chosen to protect her, because sometimes saving one life means everything, even if it costs you your last shot. The sky was calm again. Gray clouds hung above the scorched earth. But the gunfire was gone. Only the wind moved, now soft, quiet, gentle. Ethan sat on the ground, his body aching. His shoulder was bleeding, hands burned, but his eyes stayed locked on one thing: Sierra. Curled beside him, her hand holding his tightly. She was alive. That was all that mattered. A distant hum filled the air, the sound of engine snot, enemy machines this time. But human ones, deeper and smoother. Extraction was finally coming. 2 rescue dropships appeared in the sky. They hovered slowly above the field. Then descended like angels from the smoke. Soldiers rushed out. Medics and security mixed together. Weapons up, eyes scanning for threats. One of them spotted Ethan. "Target found," they shouted. "We've got the creepy medic alive." But when they saw Sarah, everything stopped. Half of the unit raised weapons again. The alien girl was a risk, an unknown. Step away from the enemy. One soldier barked. Ethan stood quickly, moving in front of Sarah. "She's not the enemy," he said, voice tired but clear. "She's the reason I'm still breathing." A medic ran up, hesitated. "She's injured," they said. "But protocols? I don't care about protocols," Ethan snapped. "She gets treatment, or I don't leave." The lead officer walked over. Face unreadable, he looked at Ethan, then at Sierra. "What is she to you?" he asked. Ethan looked back at her, weak, bruised, scarred, but strong. "She's someone I gave a promise to," he said. "And I keep my promises." There was a long pause. The officer finally gave a nod. "Bring them both in," he said. "But she stays under watch." Sierra was lifted gently onto a stretcher. Ethan climbed into the dropship beside her. The medics worked quickly, starting fluids, giving pain relief. She smiled at him weakly. "You did it," she whispered. "No," he said, holding her hand again. "We did it." The dropship lifted into the sky. Below them, the battlefield looked small now. Just ashes and scars, fading into the distance. But inside that ship, something new was beginning, something neither side expected. Back at the base, everything was different. Whispers followed Ethan wherever he went. Some called him a hero, others called him a traitor. But Ethan didn't care. He sat beside Sierra in the med bay every day. Talked to her, laughed with her. Watched her get stronger, little by little. She was given a small room, a bed, clean clothes. Warm food, things she had never known. At first, she didn't trust it. She flinched when doors opened. Froze when soldiers passed, but Ethan stayed with her. He taught her the names of Earth's fruits, told stories of rain and music. She shared tales of her home world, blue trees, floating rivers, sunless nights. They were two pieces of different worlds. And yet, something about them fit together. One evening, as the sun set behind the glass wall of the med bay, Sierra sat quietly, looking out. Ethan walked in, carrying a small metal box. "I brought something," he said, smiling. He opened it to reveal the pendant, hers. Still cracked but polished clean, she gasped, taking it in her hands. "I thought it was gone. You gave it to me when you thought you'd die," Ethan said. "I'm giving it back because you lived." She looked at him for a long time, then leaned forward and hugged him gently. It was the first time she had touched someone without fear. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," he replied. "You saved me from forgetting what it means to care." The news of their story spread across camps. Soldiers on both sides heard whispers of a human who saved an enemy, of an alien girl who learned to trust. It didn't change the war, but it sparked questions, and sometimes, that's where peace begins. Weeks passed. Sierra was strong enough to walk on her own. Her body still carried scars, but her spirit had fire again. One day, as Ethan prepared for reassignment, she stopped him at the gate. "Where are you going?" "Supply route escort," he said. "Boring stuff." She stepped closer. "Take me with you," she said. He raised a brow, surprised. "You sure?" She nodded. "You said we're a team, right?" He smiled, reached out his hand. "Then let's go. Together." They stepped beyond the base walls, beyond the battlefield, beyond the scars. They walked side by side, a human and an alien girl who had once bled out in the dust, now walking into a future no one could predict. Because sometimes hope doesn't come from a flag or an army. Sometimes it starts when one person drops a weapon and reaches out with a hand instead.